So you give me permission to record this conversation then?
Yes, I do.
Excellent.
And I trust you.
Thank you. So tell me what you. So tell me your name is. Can you tell me your name?
Stephanie Hughes, Hughes.
Okay. And Stephanie, when did you work at the Summit School?
In 1979,
Okay. And what was your position there?
I was the counselor to Wings. That was 10 boys between the ages of 15 and 18.
Between the ages of 15 and 18, 10 boys. Okay. And who hired you?
A guy named Mac, and I don't remember his last name. He's a big black guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to remember where I got to know him, but I had been working up the street at the Fellowship of Reconciliation. I worked there for, 5 or 6 years.
What'd you do there?
I'm a graphic designer. I was working on their magazine. The FOR is an anti-war group.
Oh,
or
cool.
It was at that time.
Cool.
And famous in the fight to fund Martin Luther King, and very, very effective for many years, but right at that time it was beginning to fall by the wayside. It was not getting the funding that it had gotten earlier, and the leadership was not on a level. It just was. It had been formed at the end of World War I, and it had been fighting war ever since. And I
That's
think
great.
at that point, it just gave. I think that the issues that they dealt with had become so complicated, they just weren't ready for it. Anyway, there were a great bunch of people,
Yeah.
and it was a beautiful building. Those buildings, along the river there, those old mansions
Yeah.
are, in a wonderful spot.
Yep.
And the Summit School was just a little further down the road from the FOR, and somewhere I ran into this guy, Mac. And,
Before we move any further, I'm just going to ask that if there are any students' names that you're thinking of, please don't say any students' names whatsoever in the recording. But
Okay.
you can mention any staff, teachers, or anybody else.
Okay, fine. Yeah, in fact, I'm still in touch with one of the kids.
Oh, awesome.
Through Facebook.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see now. So Mac, he said that they had a
So
position
did you have any prior experience in working with children with disabilities prior to working there?
No, I mean, I had kids of my own, daughters, and I gotta tell you, out of those 10 boys, there were only 2 that had any disabilities. The rest were perfectly normal.
So why were they there?
Good question. The simple answer is most of them were the sons of single mothers, and that age range is very hard for a mother to deal with a boy between the age of 15 and 18.
Okay. I've never actually heard yet. This is the first time I'm hearing that there was any student there that either was. There was nobody there that didn't have a disability, or they were placed there by the courts.
Oh yeah, well that had to happen. I mean, when the mother had reached the end of her rope with the kid, various options were presented to her by the people that were telling her she had to do something about him.
Gotcha.
And I've got one in mind, but they were all pretty much the same story. Middle class, came from Long Island, full-time woman, working woman, full-time, definitely middle class, and so when her kid keeps getting in trouble, they go to, and in those days it was smoking pot. That was like, you were a demon, pot was demonized in those days. So these kids would get together, and that got him in trouble. And so, she went for it, because what happens is they would go and take a look at the school. And man, that's impressive when you go on the campus,
Yeah,
or at least it was in those days.
looks pretty beautiful then, huh?
Yeah, it was beautiful. The only thing was, which I noticed when I went to work there, was that the doors locked as soon as you went. You had to have keys with you to go anywhere in order to get into any other part of the building, and because the doors would close and lock, and and the windows were covered with plexiglass. So something in me said, "Uh-oh," and anyway, I went for it. I like boys. I always have. I'm very fond of them as human beings, and I think they're special. And I have girls. My kids are girls, so it was
prior
an
to working,
opportunity.
prior to working there, you never worked with boys.
What's that?
So prior to being hired as a wings counselor, you never even worked with boys. You never even had children that were boys.
No. Yeah, I mean, I would have gotten hired if I had, 4 arms and no head. I mean,
Okay, so let's take a step forward for a second. So, what type of training did they provide you with?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Oh, well, I had a conversation with the guy who did the hiring. His name was Cosentino.
Tom Cosentino.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with him, and I guess I was plausible. And they need people, and people don't last there. Good people don't last.
Right.
You have to, and I needed a job right then. I wasn't getting enough work from the FOR, and I just needed work. I had kids to feed, and so I thought, well, let's give it a try. And I learned very quickly that there were 2 cultures going on there, and I wasn't going to be able to occupy both of them at the same time. The culture, there was the culture of the counselors, and there was the culture of the kids.
Okay. Tell me about the culture of the counselors.
Okay, the counselors, there were 3 other counselors, and Paul Kubik, who I think I've noticed that you used his name, Mac, whose name I don't remember, and a woman named, Cowens. What was his first name? John Cowens. You know his name?
I've heard it before. Yeah.
All right. Oh, he was extremely bad. The others were not bad people. They just were not constituted to do anything for kids that age. And I don't say troubled kids because I had these 10 kids, only 2 of them could be considered troubled in any way. The rest were perfectly normal boys in that age group. And a couple of them were quite intelligent. They were middle class. They were, they were anything but troublemakers.
What was Richard Sitman at the school at that point?
Richard, what was it?
Richard Sitman. Does that name ring a bell?
Well, I don't remember their names, but the place was owned by 2 brothers.
Well, Mayor Stiskin. And I'm not sure what.
Are they brothers?
I'm not. I thought it was. Well, it was founded by Mayor Stiskin. I'm not sure if he had a brother or anything like that. It was founded by Mayor Stiskin.
At that time, it was run by 2 brothers.
Okay. And they were above Tom Costantino.
Oh yeah, they owned the place.
Okay.
They owned it.
But there was. You don't remember who the principal of the school was, Richard Sitman, at all, or?
Oh, the school was negligible, and I don't remember who was involved in it. It was a joke. These kids were not getting any kind of real schooling.
Yeah.
And that part of it I don't really remember, and I also don't remember about the eating. I've tried to remember that they went up to Hartel's and bought themselves pizza and cookies and soda and stuff like that. So they often didn't even show up for lunch.
Yeah.
And nobody was tracking this. Nobody was paying any attention. And I learned very quickly not to tell anybody when the boys were not doing what they were supposed to do, because then, somebody was going to beat them up. That was given to John Collins to do, to take care of,
Well,
because he was willing to do that.
I'm sorry, John Collins beat the kids up?
Yeah. Yeah, he would take one of them into one of the elevators that was padded, and he would just, smack him around. And these were teenagers. They were not able to fight him.
Yeah.
He was a tall, skinny guy. He also dealt cocaine, and not to the kids, but to the other counselors. It was bad. He was a very bad piece of work, and the kids were afraid of him, and they hated him. And they told me things. They knew everything about the place. They knew how much these brothers were getting for each one of them. Something like.
I'm sorry. Can you hold on for like just 2 minutes?
Yep.
Thanks. Hello. Hey, I'm sorry about that. I'm back.
Okay. So the kids told me all this stuff. They knew how much these brothers were getting for each one of them, $21,000 a month or something like that. Huge amount of money.
Yeah.
From the state. And in order to get your kid in there, you had to have a letter from a psychiatrist, and he had to diagnose the kid as latent schizophrenic. So these kids all were diagnosed as latent schizophrenic, and like I said, 8 of them, no way in the world were these kids latent schizophrenics.
Okay.
But in order to get in order to get placed there, that's what they had to. They had to have that.
Wow. What kind? So did you? I want to know what kind of physical abuse John Collins did. A little bit more detailed, if you do remember, and then also was Paul Kubik an abuser as well?
Well, this is how it went. The counselors stayed in their office. There was a little room that was the counselor's office, and what they were supposed to do was keep their stuff there. And when the kid came and asked them for something or came to complain, then they would act on it. But what they actually did was sit there and never leave, and play boggle with each other, and read the newspaper. And the kid would come and complain and say that, so-and-so was causing trouble and somebody should come. And they said, okay, we'll be there. And then they wouldn't leave. They just ignored it. And Kubik, that's what he did. Kubik, he wasn't abusive. I never saw him be abusive in a physical way. Collins was the one who was abusive.
So what kind of things did Collins do to kids?
He beat them up. And not where anybody could see, but he would take them into this elevator and turn it off, keep it from running, and beat them up.
Did you witness these beatings, or you just heard about them?
No, I didn't, but I heard about it.
Okay. And this happened to all the.
These boys did not lie to me. They did not lie. They were so grateful to have a human being who showed some consideration and caring for them. They were, I will never forget what they were like. They were just great kids. And there was one in particular, as there always is with a bunch of boys, one who is chosen by the rest as a leader. And that's what he did. He was the one they went to for advice and for help. He was he was no different than they were. He wasn't any older, but he had leadership qualities. And I mean, they were so just. They were so fair. They were so good to each other. I just love those kids. there wasn't anything in the world that would have made me do anything to hurt any one of them.
Is that why you left the school? Is because of the abuse?
Well, why I left the school? First of all, within maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks, I became aware that number one, I was alone in being the boy's friend. The other counselors were not their friend, and I had to choose between being friends with the counselors or being friends with the boys, and I chose the boys, and I knew that was not going to work out in that atmosphere. It just wasn't going to. I didn't know how it was going to go haywire, but I knew it would sooner or later, and it did. The eventual breakdown was, maybe I'll tell you about that sometime, but I'd rather keep that to myself for the moment.
Sure.
Because I played a part. I mean, I was in my 40s. This was the 70s. You're a lot younger, I think.
How old are you now?
I'm in my 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I was in my 40s in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the 70s were an amazing time in America, and a time of great creativity and great, the wonderful movies, the wonderful music. It was a great time, but it was a time of a great deal of unrest, and the old guard was afraid and angry, and it was manifested in the school, and
knowing that this stuff still knowing now that you've seen the group and the page, knowing that this stuff still goes on, do you feel that we should shut Summit down?
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, maybe it could be a good institution.
Yeah.
But as long as these guys who own it are in control, because they knew what went on. They knew.
Yep.
Of course they knew that Collins was beating kids up.
Yep.
I mean, you can't keep that quiet.
Yeah.
But, as long as they got the money from the state.
Yeah.
As long as they got that money, they were going to stick with it. And Cosentino was stuck in the middle. He had a family. He had to make a salary, and and he was decent to me. And when I did get in trouble, which of course I did, he laid it out. He said, either we're going to fire you or you're going to quit. And I said, okay, I quit. And that was the end of it.